We're going to talk more about this right now. Nason Mahboubi, who is the research scholar for the Center of the Study of Contemporary China at the University of Pennsylvania, joining us from Philadelphia. Good to see you, sir. Welcome to the show. Let me start with this for our global audience. Some, of course, may know, but I think many would be fair to say don't know. What's the communique and what is it used for in this particular instance?
So the communique is a summary of the basic discussion that occurred over the last few days at the plenum meeting. We're waiting for the more detailed decision that I think we'll expect within the next week or so. But for now, this is basically a statement of principles and summarization of main points from the discussion.
Okay, fair enough. One of the key topics that has been emphasized over the past few days is this rule of law. Explain to us why this is so important and if by discussing it, this is considered perhaps a major breakthrough.
Well, China has made many advances over the past 30 years towards developing a more modern legal system. Many of the things that we're talking about under this rubric of rule of law now are things that have been developed over some 10, 20, 30 years. But there does seem to be some importance to the plenum, which is the leadership's highest meeting, focusing on this topic. As far as I know, this is the first time that a plenum has actually focused on the topic of the rule of law. So that indicates the importance that the leadership is putting on this subject at this time.
Of course, and that relates back to another thing that they're focused very heavily on as well, and that is sort of the governance, if you will, of local government, regional governments. Of course, then you have the national government. Now, in the communique, as I read it, there was a separation where they were giving perhaps more centralized power. And we're going to get into this a little bit more. I don't want to get too much into the weeds here. But first of all, is that a good thing, and how does that benefit companies?
Well, I think, whether it's a good thing or not is maybe too broad a question for me to be able to answer well. But I think that to the extent that there's concerns that companies, whether foreign or Chinese, in local areas might encounter interference from local authorities, to have a court system operating at the local level that is more independent of those local leaders is certainly going to be to their benefit.
And I would imagine that would help reduce potential conflicts of interest. It perhaps would ensure, I'm guessing, uniform decision-making, so you wouldn't have one area or province making a decision on X, Y, Z and another making the exact same decision, but come up with a very different outcome.
That's right. I mean, there's some potential for that to happen when local courts are too dependent on the local governments. And so if you separate out the local courts from the local governments, there's more potential that the local courts can make decisions independently. And then, of course, if they're being supported by the provincial or even the central government, then they can make decisions more fairly and neutrally.
Another part of that statement, and I'll just quote it here, the Standing Committee will have a larger role in obeying the Constitution. Explain to our audience what they're referring to exactly.
So in many countries, the Constitution is considered to be the fundamental law of that country. And one of the things that we sometimes look for is whether lower level rules and regulations are made to be consistent with the Constitution. And if they are in conflict, whether there's a mechanism for resolving that conflict. So in this communique, there's some language that suggests that the supervision function within the National People's Congress Standing Committee may be improved, which would, I think, to those of us who care about the Constitution serving as the fundamental law of a country, that would seem to be a positive step.
Some were expecting, as I mentioned to Tang Bo, to hear more about this anti-corruption charge that's been, over the past year or two. Might we see that more of this in the details that you say you were expecting in another week or so?
It's hard to say. It's a very, very interesting question. The anti-corruption campaign may move towards a more institutionalized and systematic approach. And one way of doing that would be through the legal system. And so it's easy to see why we might try to connect development of the legal system with the anti-corruption movement. From the communique, as I've read it, and like everyone else, I've just looked at it today, and there's a lot of language to go through, but I haven't seen the connection to the anti-corruption campaign drawn out very clearly. I'm not sure what conclusion to draw from that now. We'll have to see if there's some additional language in the decision.
We'll have to wait another week, apparently. Nason Mahboubi, thank you very much from the University of Pennsylvania. Good to have you on. Thank you.